Hooray! More parametric equation examples. Let's jump into it. What curve is represented by having x being a function of t, but x is equal to the square root of t, y being a function of t as well, or y is equal to just t, and we're only going to be looking at values of t that are 0 and larger. Now, I beat around the bush on this one. I haven't quite got to it. Maybe you can look back at the older videos and converted this as well. But we can actually just figure out what this is in x's and y's. We can do substitutions and plug this stuff in and find out just what the curve is, and we can use our badass knowledge without making silly tables, right? We don't want to make tables. That's ridiculous. So let's start with the idea that y is equal to t. But isn't y equal to the square root of t all squared? I mean, if that's true, if we had our values of t are 0 or larger, that wouldn't be true for negative t's, but that's our situation, so we're good. And notice I wrote the square root of t in blue because that's actually just x. So if you were to go and sub this in, you could find out the y is, well, that's just equal to x squared. Well, dude, we already have we got the skills to handle this. Let's go. Let's draw a little something up and see what we got. Oh, there's our example from before. We're familiar with this, so I'm just going to draw up some sort of parabola. There it is, a parabola. Hooray! Well, we got to give this shit orientation. We got to give it orientation. So where would we start? So, oh, t's equal to 0. So let's figure out what point that would be. When t is equal to 0, we plug those things in. We get square root of 0 is 0. 0 is equal to 0. So, okay, so we start right down here. So that's our A. That's our initial point. That's where we'll begin. Now let's plug in another number, like maybe, I don't know, 1. So we get the square root of 1 is equal to 1, and 1 is equal to 1. And so that's saying we're going to go to this point next. So I don't think we need to do much more. I think we're moving in this direction. Do you think we're ever going to have anything on the left-hand side? And we wouldn't have anything on the left-hand side. Can you see why? That wouldn't work out so well, considering the fact that you can't have negative values underneath that square root. So that's why those t's had to be positive. So we have our orientation. We start at some point 0, 0. We continue along the curve, and we can see where we're heading. I like to think of it as time is passing. So let's do another one, very similar. So I want to keep this in here. Let's do this one next. So we did that, and now let's do now what curve is represented by, and let's just change it up a little bit. It's the same game. X is equal to t, and then let's make y equal to t squared. We'll keep shit mellow, because this is the game we want to keep trying to play this game. It's nicer to put them together, figure out some new just one equation that there isn't x's and y's, because we know how to graph that stuff. There we are. We'll play that same game and say, well, y is just equal to t squared. So y is equal to something squared. Oh, shoot. That's just x. So there we have it. The y is equal to x squared. We have the same thing, but you know what? I don't want that t greater than or equal to 0. Let's get rid of that. That's nonsense. Let's go big. Let's take them all. No biggie. We got them all. Let's run through it. So let's go graph this sucker up. We know what a parabola looks like. So let's go get ourselves a little xy. We graph it up. We got this. Maybe. Parabola. And it's taken off. Well, now when we go to plug in points, let's go plug in 0, 0, right? So when we plug in 0, we get 0. When we plug in 0 squared, we get 0. There's that point at t equals 0. At t equals 1, we're going to get that 1, 1 again, right? So we're going in the same direction. where x's and our y's are 1 and our t is equal to 1. But shit, let's plug in a negative value and see what that is. So, oh, let's not put it there. Let's put it in the order of time. Come on. The order of time. So this was when t was equal to 0. This was when t was equal to 1. Now let's look at when t is equal to negative 1. So that means our x value is negative 1, and the negative 1 all squared, that's positive 1. So that follows that parabola. So it's saying that this is at t equals negative 1. So we're going with the same orientation, except now we actually have the left-hand side of our curve because of the domain issues. We had a domain issue on our first problem up here with that square root of t, and then down below we didn't, so we were allowed to use any values of t. But we see that we have the same orientation. We just mix it up a little bit. So that's how we can go through and, you know, a little natural parameterization going on here. We'll have more to come.